Then on Sports Central, we go for a college football game preview and prediction on the Week 1 matchup between Georgia and Clemson. Huge matchup for both teams coming up here in Week 1. You got Georgia, top-ranked team in the country for a reason. This is the national favorite by many, and if you look at this team, you'll see why. This is going to be a dominant team on both sides, a brutal team to beat that's been 42-2 in the last 3 seasons. They're taking on Clemson, the 14th ranked team in the country, and the Tigers have kind of been a letdown in recent years, but they did improve over the course of last season. There is optimism in Clemson heading into the season. So with that, we'll be going for a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today. Let's get started. Game's going to be on Saturday the 31st in Atlanta. So a neutral location for this one. Kickoff noon Eastern. Spread's going Georgia by 13.5. So Georgia, I mean, this is kind of expected to be a 2-touchdown favorite. Clemson's expected to be good this season, but in comparison to a team like Georgia, it makes sense to see them a 2-touchdown favorite, over under 49.5. FPI going with Georgia as well, 82%. You look at the series history, we did see these two teams play each other. Would have been back in 2021, which we did see. It was a low-scoring matchup back in 2021. Georgia won it 10-3. That was at the very start of what has been just a dominant run here the last few seasons for Georgia, and it looks to continue as we look forward to 2024. Your stat comparison, these are stats from last season. Obviously, things will be different, but you can just see how dominant Georgia was last season. 5th in points per game, 7th in points allowed. This was the 12th ranked pass offense in the country, 17th in rushing, and then they were 9th against in pass defense, and then 16th against the run last year. You look at Clemson. This was a strong team, especially on defense. 24th in the country in points allowed, 12th in pass defense, 27th in rush defense. But the offense was just too inconsistent for this team to really be successful, and they would go on to a 4-4 start. So, and I mean, the 3 losses after that Duke one were all close ones. 2 of those losses were in overtime, and then a touchdown loss to NC State as well. So, I mean, Clemson kept it close. They just had a few really tough, close losses last season, and once they hit November, things took a turn, and this team actually was playing pretty well. They put up 31 on Notre Dame, 42 on Georgia Tech, beat North Carolina 31-20, and that eventually led to a bowl win against Kentucky. So Clemson played well down the stretch. I think that's what brings optimism to Clemson, looking forward to 2024, and that's a big reason why this team is ranked 14th in the country. For your key points, Georgia 13-1 last year. I'll say it again. I've said it all offseason. I mean, you put this team in the playoff. Like, honestly, they could have been last year. They were the most dominant team in the country until that SEC championship game. Otherwise, I mean, Georgia, I would argue, was the best team in the nation. Michigan was obviously a top-tier team last year, but when it comes down to it, if Georgia was put up against Michigan, I might have favored Georgia to win that if they had met in the college football playoffs. So, I mean, they were very capable of winning it all last season. It just was that SEC championship and that one loss that came back to bite. And that's also a big reason why the 12-team playoff is something to really look forward to, because we're not going to have to face really anything like that in the future, hopefully. But Carson Beck, he leads a potential field offense. This defense should remain one of the toughest in the country. It was really the offense that shined last year for Georgia. I mean, you think of the last 3 years or so, I would say in 21, the defense is what really shined. 2022 was somewhere in between. Last year, there's the offense that was really the highlight of this team. And so looking forward to 2024, I see a pretty balanced team here. They'll be a really strong team on both sides. And I mean, that should be to be expected. This team is 42-2 in their last 3 seasons. That's just an insane stat there. You look at Clemson, the Tigers have been a bit of a letdown the last few years, but they did improve over the course of 2023. Once again, that's what really I think is something to look forward to, is the fact that this team improved, and they have some strong momentum looking forward to 2024. Cade Klubnik, he's going to be significant in how far this team goes. If he can improve going into the season and play at a high level, not commit as many turnovers, that will go a long way in how far Clemson goes this season. The defense does have a lot of young talent, so there is a bit of inexperience on this team. Despite everything, I mean, that's why they had such high expectations going into last year, was because of the experience this team had. But obviously, it just wasn't enough, and the offense is what kind of came back to bite here. But, I mean, this is a critical season for Clemson, honestly. You look at, Dabo Swinney, the last few years, the disappointments and everything. This is a really challenging week 1 matchup, but it's also at the same time a huge opportunity. If Clemson can find a way to knock off Georgia in this one, that puts this team in national contention, and they should be a pretty strong national contender in this upcoming season. But obviously for Georgia, coming off of last year, they are not going to be an easy team to beat. This is going to be a team with a chip on their shoulder, coming off of what was it was a disappointing finish to last season, when honestly I think a lot of people think they should have been in the college football playoff last year. But a lot going into this matchup. So with that, let's get a prediction here for Georgia and Clemson. Coming up here in week 1, in the end, I do want to go with the favorite. I'm taking Georgia 31-17 here. It's one of those games where, Clemson's going to be a strong team this year. I do think they'll be improved. They should be one of, if not the strongest team in the ACC this season. When it comes down to it, and you're comparing this team against Georgia, I just got to go with the Bulldogs here. I see this being maybe a closer matchup at first. I see it being one of those games, though, where in the second half, Georgia pulls away and wins it by a couple of touchdowns. I think Georgia 65% here. I'm taking the under. I wouldn't be surprised if I don't see it really being a big, high-scoring shootout, but I do have Georgia covering the spread in the end. But with that, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup. What do you think of these two teams? And I appreciate you guys watching as always. My name's Evan. This is All Sports Central. Stay tuned for more. We'll catch you on the next one.